So, the theme of my project is influence of climate and geographical location on the history and culture. So, research question is how does climate and geographical location influence on history and culture? So, in disciplinary links, geography, biology, maths, history, psychology, physics and informatics. So areas of interaction: homo faber, community and service and environment. So climate from Greek's climates, independence, is in comparison of statistics of rainfall, wind, sun activity and other things on a certain place for a long time. If you will look at the following graphic, you will see that there were 4 times when the global cooling and there were no history because in this situation can survive only 6,000 of people on the planet. And all our history is survived only because of good weather in this period when we live. By the statistic, we think that after some time it will be again a global cooling. Next, please. So, but how does influence 1 or half of degree change of temperature on climate on culture and history? We can see that 3,000 years and 100 BC there were a very cold period of history, and in this time there were foundation of 3 empires immediately in different locations. 1 Egypt, 2nd Indo-Harappan and Sumerian. After a long time warming in about 2,100 years BC, Egypt fell in civil wars in one period. After cooling between about 2,000 years BC, Egypt restored into Middle Kingdom of Egypt, and they ended all civil wars. After that, about 200 or 300 years later, it was destroyed by Hyksos in warm period. After cooling of weather, Egypt beat Hyksos in about 100 years and restored himself into a new kingdom. After that, there were only centralization of this kingdom, and between 800 and 400 years BC, it was time of axial age, the coldest and long-term cold period. Cold so because it was a lot of inventions in this time. For example, invention of iron, money, there lived people like Pythagoras and others. So this was very cool time because there were formed all religions of the world, and some psychologists think that in this time were formed psychology of modern humanity. In this time, the very and long-term warm time, it was the Middle Age, known like time without time, because there were no interest in wars or anything else, only civil wars inside European governments. Next, please. And how does climate influence on culture? I want to tell you about one interesting example. In 14th century BC, there was a volcanic eruption near Egypt. The dust covered the sun, and people thought that it is war of gods. For example, the first eruption covered the sun, and the king of Egypt thought that it is because we are paying no attention to the god of the sun. And they began to pay it. After that, sun appeared, and priests thought that we should pay more attention to other gods. But sun was covered again. Again, king thought that we shall pay more attention to the sun. They paid it, and sun appeared once again. After that, priests again think that they should pay more attention to other gods, and sun was covered in the third time. After that, king understood that the god of the sun is only one true god, and it's the main, there are no other gods. So, if you talk about Russia and Oblomov, we can say that Russia is the coldest country in the world, but how does it influence on life, for example, of the peasants? We can say that their life is very hard because, for example, in Europe we have 9 months to grow and seeds, but in Russia we have only 5. In Europe we can grow from 1 volume of seeds about 10 or 7 volumes using the technology of 18th century. But in Russia we can grow from 1 volume only 3 or 4 volumes of seeds. It means no economy at all. And if you think that in winter we can rest, you are wrong, because of very cold climate we need to chop about 20 cubic meters of woods just to survive in this cold climate. And for example, for rich people, they pay no attention to their peasants, and it was so lazy because they had everything, because peasants were so beaten by the climate and tyranny that they cannot answer to the rich people and just made them like gods. The next. So we can predict using one program of Mr. Klimenko, Dr. Klimenko, Russian scientist. He has a lab in Russia which made prediction of weather for a long time. He started his prediction not long time ago, but he thought if we can check the climate situation with anthropogenic factor and without it, you can see that this line is with anthropogenic factor and this without. Without carbon dioxide, our planet can fall into the small ice period once again, or even in the big ice period. With carbon dioxide, we will get very good weather on Russian planet. We can grow grapes in Moscow. It is very good for economy, but people will become lazy as in Oblomov times. So conclusion is that in the cold periods of weather, people are strong, governments are strong, and there is no enemies to the strong government. But in warm periods, people became lazy, like Oblomov. So, like a product of my project, we can look and read this small book, and that's all. Have you any questions? Yes.
Yeah, I just want to ask, you said about Egypt and Russia, but are there any other cultures?
Yes, there are cultures. We can. There is a list of used literature.
Yes.
You can look at it and read this literature, because I could not say in 10 minutes all the culture of all the kingdoms of humanity, but if you will read it, you will find out that always in cold periods people were centralizing government and there were developments of the mind. And in all warm periods there were destruction and civil wars. But you should remember that sometimes when it is global warming, for example in Asia, it is good weather because there is a lot of rains. But in cold period, it is cold period it rains, and in warm periods it droughts. So their history is not like European. Okay, so that's it. Have you any questions more? Okay.
Спасибо.